Hi, I'm Mark Harling with Bean Trailer, and I am here with Niz, and I'm so excited to have you here. Niz is one of our customers that has the awesome distinction of being the first Bean 2.0 that was picked up. Now, a lot of times people will come in and they'll pick up a trailer and they'll drive back to their location, but that's not what you did, is it?
No, we actually planned day 4 of our trip to be picking up the trailer and then just taking off and getting into trip mode and learning things on the go.
So how long have you been out?
We've been out for 60 days, 6,000
Yeah.
miles so far.
Yeah.
We got another 120 days and another 10,000 miles, even more, who knows? But it's been a wild ride, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I learned that about you, it seemed like you were living your best life, right? And I was super curious about how you got to the position where you could make the mental leap to actually, because I know you're a career guy.
Yep.
I know that your wife is, a professional.
Yep.
And what is it that inspired this like huge leap of faith? I guess what I'm saying is that I think as humans we talk ourselves out of a lot of things, right? Like, well, I can't do this because I don't have enough money, or I'm not sure it's going to be safe.
Yep.
Or you probably know the list because
yeah.
you just did this.
Yeah.
You probably know the list better than I do. But tell me a little bit about your journey to figuring out that you guys were going to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea of doing something like this really came from a place of burnout. We just needed a break from work. We've been working our butts off our entire lives, and we started to realize, we should take a meaningful hiatus away from our daily routine, away from Chicago, which is where we're from, and do something that makes us feel uncomfortable, where we can learn about ourselves and things like that. We learned about this idea of people doing these 6-month sabbaticals. There's a great TED Talk on it, where you just go, it's 6 months seems like a lot, and a lot of people think it is a lot, but it's only 2% of your career. We thought if you did that, we're gonna come back, we're gonna be re-energized, rejuvenated, let's just try to make this happen. My wife and I, we wanted to also elevate our relationship. At the time of thinking about this, we were not married. So we thought, let's couple it with a way to go on a trip right after we get married and do it in a kind of a sentimental way that we will always remember for the rest of our lives. That's why you'll see on the back of our trailer, our license plate says LEAP, because we are taking a leap of faith. It is a leap year, and we got married on leap day. So
cool.
That's kind of the branding for us internally in our relationship.
That's awesome.
And we learned that there's the best time to do this is yesterday.
Yeah.
And if we keep waiting and stalling and thinking about all the reservations we have about doing this or not, we're never going to take the plunge.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it started.
Yeah. What were some of those reservations?
I think the biggest reservation, at least for me, is just safety. You're coming out of an environment where you got shelter, you're in an apartment, you got running water, you got electricity, you got a security guard downstairs. And to completely break all that and then just be on the road and completely immersing yourself in the unknown. Your car can break down, one of you can get sick. We have a dog on this trip. He could have an injury. All of those things can really make someone like me who's an overthinker just stop and not do it. Safety is the biggest reservation. The second is finances. You're going from, again, an environment where you're saving more than you're spending to meet retirement goals or what have you, to an environment where you're spending at a time when you're not making any money. The ratio completely changes.
Yeah.
That is, it's a big thing to swallow for sure.
Yeah.
And just breaking routine. I think this breaking routine is scary. You get so comfortable and resistant to change, and to tell yourself that I'm going to change everything it's not as easy as I'm making it look like it's out to be, especially when I'm posting pictures on Instagram.
I'm sure there was some serious anxieties, right? And probably some of it was just generalize. You didn't because it was different, right? Like
Yep.
some of it you probably couldn't even put your finger on and like, oh man, this is scary, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Tell me a little bit about how Bean got into this leap year picture.
Yeah, leap year picture. I love that. So 5 years ago, my wife and I, we got into the outdoors. Let's just put it that way. You know, we started camping, and we started enjoying camping every year. We would upgrade a certain aspect of our gear. We would upgrade our stove. The following year, we would upgrade like our fridge. Or sorry, let me start that question again.
Okay.
Every year since we've started camping, we've always upgraded some dimension of our trip. Upgrading our stove, we went from a cooler to a fridge, we got into solar panels, we finally got into a 4x4 vehicle. And we really like the idea of tent camping. There's just something about tent camping, like standing something up, you can hear the nature, you still feel pretty primal, you still gotta take care of yourself, you're not in an enclosed cavity where you can stand up in, and we like that experience a lot. But when we decided to do this trip, we realized like we have to live out of this thing for 6 months. You can't live out of a tent for 6 months. I mean, you can, but we can't. We're not that comfortable yet to do that. And we looked at everything in the spectrum from like a rooftop tent all the way to a camper van to a sprinter van. And as you know, Mark, like there's trade-offs and pros and cons to every single type of setup.
For sure.
We stumbled upon teardrops when we actually saw Drew's Playing with Sticks channel, because he has like a lot of examples of different types of teardrops in the market. And we did see a couple of teardrops in the market. We went to one of your pop-up tours in Michigan, and we instantly fell in love with the Bean because it's got that tent-like feel, but it's rugged enough to survive the elements, which we felt confident enough that could survive for at least 6 months.
Yeah.
But at the time, the stock 2.0 wasn't out, and one of the things we didn't like about the Bean at the time was it was expensive. It was like out of our budget.
Yeah.
So we kind of had to think about going aftermarket, seeing if we can get a Bean for, that's used, so it's a little bit cheaper.
Right.
So we reached out to a couple of folks who were selling their Beans used on the market, but they're still really expensive. And then you don't know, like some of these trailers are not in Chicago or in Illinois, so logistically, like how would we go somewhere to see the Bean, to see if it's in good working order? I don't even know what to look for. To then buy something and haul it over to Chicago, then go on our trip, it just didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So teardrop camper is what we wanted just for that tent-like appeal. Effectively, if it's something, we just wanted something that was built like a tank that had the tent-like properties for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I take it, so you were shopping for Beans, and then when 2.0 came out, it was like right in the, I'm assuming it was right in the budget what you wanted to spend. And
yeah, so our budget was $25,000.
Yeah.
We didn't want to go any higher than that. We didn't need a galley. We're not galley people. We like just taking our stuff, putting it on a picnic table or somewhere outside. We like the outdoors. You want to be able to camp and look at the outdoors. We wanted more light inside of the trailer, and we wanted it to be a little bit more roomier than the meaner Bean.
Yeah.
We wanted to have I get a little claustrophobic at times, so I needed a little bit more space so that I could feel like I could breathe better.
Yeah.
So when the stock 2.0 came out, it hit 3 great things for us. It was right in our price point. It had that panoramic window, and it had that outdoor modular kitchen. As a trade-off from the galley. It was exactly what we were looking for. From that moment, it was just a matter of how do we get this thing?
Yeah.
Because at that time, when you launched it, we needed it in 2024. We needed it as soon as possible. We literally came to Cindy and we were like, take our money. Just, can you give us it right away? Can you expedite the creation of this thing?
That's funny because I think Cindy talked to me and like, hey man, we got to get these people. we got to get these people a trailer. They're gonna be out for months on it, Yeah,
so. Cindy was like, June is what it's looking like realistically. And we're like, can you make it May somehow?
All right. All right, so I'm gonna throw some stuff out here. Like, how did you plan for the trip financially, locations, from a safety standpoint, from a food standpoint, from a hygiene standpoint? And I can repeat these at any time, too.
Got it.
Okay.
Financially, big picture, there's three major costs in this trip. There's the cost of the vehicle. We sold our car and upgraded to a 4x4 vehicle, which we're gonna keep even after this trip is over.
Right.
So is it a really major cost? Not really. It's more of an investment in what car we already have. So that's
Right.
one. There's the cost of the camper. But if we were just buying something we were gonna haul, for 3 weeks a year in the summers, then we probably invested a lot more in the camper.
Yeah.
But we need to save money so that we can actually survive for 6 months on the road.
Right.
We need an emergency fund. So we wanted to spend just the right amount of money, which for us was $25,000 for the camper. And then everything else, Mark, is in the budget of whatever expenses are part of the trip.
Yeah.
Right now, our biggest expenses are gas, campsites, and food. That's
Yeah.
pretty much it. And then we have an emergency fund just in case if something goes south, like our dog had an injury this trip. We had to fork up a lot of money for a vet bill.
Yeah.
You gotta plan for those things, but that's how we thought about things financially.
Oh, nice. How did you plan the trip regarding like picking your locations, basically the route that you were going to take?
So the route we decided based on, we have a common interest of exploring as much of the western part of the United States. We find that a lot of the national parks that we want to visit are kind of west of Chicago. We wanted to make sure we have like a meaningful pit stop in Canada. My parents are in Calgary, so we had to make our way there at some point. And then we thought if we could survive and make it to the 4-month mark, why not venture down to Mexico and see if we can, figure out a way to pivot across, narrow roads and the different kind of environment that's there. So really we divided the trip into like 6 major chapters. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but it's like, Chapter 1, let's get the trailer. How do we get to Salt Lake City? Chapter 2, how do we get to my parents' place in Calgary? What should we see along the way? Chapter 2, we want to see the Oregon coast, we want to see Washington, so let's start going from Calgary over there. Over time, we realized that the trip had these like major arteries, and then when we got to a certain place where we would spend a considerable amount of time, we'd always find like an Airbnb or some sort of an establishment where we can just like park the vehicle for a week or two and just clean it up, have access to running water and electricity and amenities again, really desaturate and recharge for the next leg. So that's how we decided on the locations. Roadtrippers.com was like probably the fundamental resource we used to like really plan out an itinerary over 16,000 miles.
Oh, wow.
You could do it on Google Maps, you could do it on an Excel spreadsheet, but Road Trippers is just a really quick and dirty and easy way to just get the major arteries planned first.
I never even heard of that.
Oh, it's incredible.
Nice.
And when we left for this trip, my dad was like, okay, send me your itinerary. It's like, here's a link to our Road Trippers itinerary. And he's just been following us every day and he knows exactly where we are. Yeah. And to make that, it didn't take that long of like ramp up time, so it was awesome.
Is this the same dad that said that this trip would only last 2 weeks?
Oh yeah. Yeah, my dad's like, oh, you're gonna be done by July, like 10th. And then he like calls us and we're like, no, we're still going. This is a lot. This is getting better. We might do this full time. Yeah, it's been great.
All right, so we talked a little bit about safety, but
yep.
What are some of your safety rules? Like how did you account for safety?
Yeah, so from a safety perspective, really quickly, like I realized that there's only 2 people and 1 dog on this trip. And to make one person responsible for safety is kind of silly. Because if that person falls sick or is not in the picture, then the other person's basically doomed.
Yeah.
So early on, my wife, Sana, and I, we established roles. So I would always be the one to typically hitch the trailer and she would double check.
Yeah.
We would watch our backs at gas stations to make sure, you can leave your doors open, people can crawl in. We've done scenario planning, like what do we do in the event there's an intruder on our campsite?
Yeah.
What if that intruder is a bear? What do we do if it's a bear?
Cool.
What if we do it's a human being?
Yeah.
Should we get a weapon?
Yeah.
Where should we store such weapon? Should we have multiple weapons?
Yeah.
We've gone through it all to come to a point where we feel pretty safe from any sort of external stimuli that can really hamper the trip.
Yeah.
And we were also thinking about our car. Our vehicle is our biggest safety issue too. Like, you know, that thing can break down, you can have a punctured tire.
Right.
If you're not looking at engine oil levels or whatever it is, you know, like
Yeah.
we're making sure everything is fully functioning
Yeah.
and making sure we're spending the time to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So on the weapon thing,
Yeah.
I typically, because we camp out so remote, I usually have a firearm when I'm camping. The one you mentioned weapons, and I just wanted to say, whatever weapon you have, whether it's a taser or a firearm or whatever it is, you know, I insist that you know how to use it and not just have it because having a weapon that you don't know how to use is a disaster waiting to happen, right?
Absolutely.
So that's the one caveat I would always say about weapons. The other is that, you know, like the gun laws in Utah are, you know, probably 180-degree different than the ones in Illinois where you're from, right?
Absolutely.
So you have to really, if you're going to travel with a firearm,
Oh, yeah.
you really got to know what is acceptable
Yeah.
in every state. So
Yeah, so when I started to realize that my biggest fear before this trip is being attacked by a bear,
yeah,
I realized that I should start looking into the idea of getting a firearm.
yeah,
And Mark, if you know me, I'm not the kind of person who gets a firearm.
right,
And I still haven't gotten this firearm.
right,
But I did all the research and, you know, crossing the border with a
Yeah.
firearm, crossing
Yeah.
state lines,
Yeah.
you get pulled over, you don't
Yep.
have the right conversation, things can go south.
Yep.
Having a firearm is probably more deterrent
yeah,
in certain places than others. So we got bear sprays, we got pepper sprays, we got batons. We
Yeah.
both carry knives. Like,
Yeah.
we know how to use those.
yeah,
But the firearm element is not. We haven't had an incident that
yeah.
has made us think twice about getting a firearm.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be if you're going to be in Canada, and then you're going to be in Mexico, like firearms are out of the question.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like,
You gotta toss it somewhere
Yeah.
before you get across the
Right.
border. We
Yeah.
do have a flare gun,
that's cool.
which is a firearm.
You should just, you should at some point just figure out a reason to fire that thing. Like end of celebration,
right.
right?
Or just tape it
End
black.
of road trip. All right. All right. So how would you, you know, a lot of times that like when you're a newbie or you're first starting to do this, I think people have a tendency to overpack.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of people that are going to be listening to this are going to be curious about what you packed and what you know, what you used more than you thought you were going to use, and you know, like what's on that list of stuff that you have not used on this trip.
Absolutely. I would grade ourselves on the packing front as a B plus.
Okay.
We're coming from an environment where, you know, we have a 2-bedroom apartment, we have so many things, we put all of it into storage, but there's certain things that, you know, they just give you joy. You're like, I'm gonna bring this.
Yeah.
And then when you start packing the vehicle, you're like, okay, this is a lot of stuff. And then
Yeah.
you start thinking about how you section off like things into long-term storage, which goes in the deep cavity of the truck, to things you're gonna need on a daily basis. But right now, like our truck is just overflowing with stuff just because we're looking for every single cavity and piece of real estate to push something into. We do spend some time purging every couple of weeks. I think it's necessary. Like you have to come back a couple of weeks and say, okay, we don't touch this set of bowls. Do we really need this set of bowls? Or we have 3 water tanks. Do we really need the 3rd water tank? It's carrying weight and it's space.
Yeah.
It's occupying space. So we've been purging a lot. But in terms of things that we use more than we thought we would, surprisingly, a walkie-talkie. Like, we didn't know on this trip that when you go to national parks, you can't bring your dog with you on trails. We were under the impression that you could just go to national parks and bring your dog on a 6-foot leash.
Right.
But when we realized that we can't do trails with the dog, it meant that someone had to stay back with their teardrop while the other person did a 4-hour hike, and then we would swap. Most of these places don't have service. So having a walkie-talkie was a
right.
great way to stay in touch.
Yep.
Also,
That is a
you know,
good
like
idea.
you're going to the grocery store, you know, having a walkie-talkie is a way faster way to tell someone, hey, like make sure you pick up the eggs
Yeah,
instead
right.
of calling them sometimes. So a walkie-talkie
Yeah.
has been really helpful. Even backing up the trailer,
Oh,
when you
yeah.
can't see someone telling you what to do, like it's easier to say, okay, you have
Yeah.
about a foot of space left until you
Yeah.
hit the hitch.
Yeah.
So walkie-talkie's been super helpful.
So how many fights have you been in backing up the trailer?
Um, so we probably hitched the trailer 50 times,
Yeah.
and we'd probably be in fights 60 times
That's,
hitching this thing.
well, I've always said if a couple can survive backing up a trailer, they can survive.
Oh,
They can go through anything.
it's just like your left is different than my left, and like I told you to take a left turn, but you can't. A left turn on backing a trailer is not the same thing
Yeah,
as backing up a
right.
vehicle. It's just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a point of intention for sure.
Was there anything you wish you'd brought that you didn't?
You know, okay, so a bear spray is very important. You should always have it. We carry it with us everywhere we go. It's attached to my sling bag. It's on our hiking bags. We haven't taken that thing out once.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you don't bring your bear spray, but if you're going to national parks where you're around people and on campsites, you're not doing the overlanding thing where you're dispersed. You know, a bear spray is kind of like a thing you don't necessarily need to bring,
Right.
but that's like its own category. I would say a hammock,
Oh, yeah.
chairs. We use the chairs seldom. We have rarely taken out that hammock. I think when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
just traveling and you're hiking and you're coming
Yeah,
back, the last
yeah.
thing you want to do is find a tree and put up a hammock.
Yeah.
And so we haven't touched the hammock at all yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's some advice for you. Leave the hammock. Hey, the hammock looks great in pictures, by the way, but you might not use it a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about the trip in general. Like, yeah, just open-ended questions. You know,
Yeah.
like you can throw in there trip highlights, trip regrets, lessons learned.
The trip has been going great. We're definitely getting the elements of the sabbatical we wanted. I haven't thought about work in like 60 days. I also have put all that energy to figuring out how this lifestyle actually works. Like the second time in my life I actually ever hitched something was when I picked up the trailer.
Wow.
And like the little things and projects along the way you start to get into, like we should get a solar panel like attached to the top of our truck, or you know the back of our truck is riding too low. Should we do something about that?
Yeah.
Those challenges have actually been kind of highlights because they're new problems to solve, very different than
Yeah.
what we come from.
Yeah.
But I think the answer that most people are looking for is like, where has been the best place we've been to so far in the last 60 days? And I think like being on the Oregon Pacific coast has been incredible with the teardrop. Just like
nice.
parking really close to the ocean and spending time all day at the ocean and then coming back to your trailer has been amazing.
Yeah.
But also seeing some bizarre phenomena, like we saw a cricket invasion in Nevada. We're just driving across and there's just crickets everywhere, and you're trying to be careful on like, you know, going over them, but you kind of had to at some point. We saw a swarm of flies and bees just like come into our campsite and just like start attacking us. You know, like the highlights were actually the most stressful periods, but we walked away being like, we're never gonna forget that moment.
Yes, you will never forget
We're
that.
never gonna forget that moment. But I think like this is gonna sound like really like touchy or cliche, but just like, you know, like learning more about my partner and learning how to survive with a dog in that environment, and the roles we knew we were gonna take with the roles we had to take naturally just by
Yeah.
being on the trip. And that's been a really interesting way to get, if you wanna really get to know somebody,
Oh, for sure.
this is one really awesome way to get to know them, especially
Yeah.
after you get married.
Yeah.
Like this is an ultimate honeymoon if you can think about it.
Yep. And aren't dogs awesome on a trip like this? They're just like, yeah, sure. Where are we going next?
Yeah.
Like, what's next?
Exactly. You just gotta pick up and go.
Yeah.
And just go with it. Yeah.
Okay. Any trip regrets? Any Great lessons learned.
Yeah, for sure. We regret not getting an air conditioner. We knew it's going to be hot, but it's kind of unbearable at times because despite the awning, I think the country's going through a heat wave, and we're driving right through a heat wave.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
And
in the last month. Yeah.
it's insane. And when your trailer has been cooking in the heat all day, and then you get into it, the heat is, because of the great insulation, it retains the heat inside, and you can have the max fan going, but it's still not going to bring the temperature down to a level that you're going to like. So we realized that we needed an air conditioner, so we just bought one.
Yeah.
That is one thing that we needed to do. Lessons learned, I would say, like, you gotta fuel up on gas when you get the opportunity. There have been many times this trip where, the gas tank is running at a quarter. We're like, yeah, something will come along the way, but it doesn't always come along the way.
Yeah.
And we've been in situations where, we're in the reserve, we're deep into the reserve tank.
Right.
And we've had to ask someone where the next gas station is and realize we have to go back where we came from because that's where the next gas station is. Checking the weather, actually I should have said that number one. You gotta check the weather constantly on almost like an hourly basis in some places you're going to, because in certain parts of Utah or in Oregon, the weather can change drastically.
True.
Whether that be wind, changing temperatures, there could be a rainstorm that can come out of nowhere, and your setup is you're not ready to survive the rain yet.
Yeah.
I feel like the weather is one dimension of our trip that we didn't really think that we had to check in so often, especially when you don't have service. So we had to get a Garmin to get the weather sent to us on that device through satellite, because you can't rely on a 5G or an LTE connection.
Yeah,
on those things.
I'm curious, Nick, if it's happened to you, but I know it's happened to me twice where I've actually run out of gas because I did that same thing. It got to be about a quarter of a tank, and I'm like, oh, there's got to be something up here. And then I hit a headwind, right? And then all of a sudden, you could almost see in the headwind, you can almost see that gas gauge.
Oh yeah. Your
dropping.
MPGs are
And I've run out of gas twice pulling a trailer that way. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Man, when you're past that half mark, start looking for a gas station.
Yep.
Yeah.
My dad had the foresight to know this might happen, so he gave us a siphon. In the event we have to stop someone over and be like, can we siphon gas?
That's cool.
That has not happened yet.
Yeah, but that, hey, on those two occasions, if I had had a siphon, it would have been put to work. Who would you recommend a trip like yours for?
The 6-month sabbatical, anyone can benefit from that. Doesn't matter what stage in your life you're in. But for this particular type of trip, is anyone who wants to elevate their camping experience. Especially from us, we're car tent campers. If you want to elevate that experience just a little bit, but do it in a minimalistic way and have the real estate to still park your car in a garage, especially if you're living in a city, I think that's the perfect market or perfect customer for this trip. But anyone really who wants to just get out in the outdoors, learn more about their partner, bring their dog, pick up and go, and just stay on sites for 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
Have really short stand up and tear down times.
Yeah.
We've been on campsites where people spend half an hour to an hour putting everything away and then going. We just spend 5 minutes and we're gone.
Yeah.
If you want to spend more time experiencing the trip,
Was that a skill that you had to develop?
For sure.
Yeah.
I would say the first time with all the nerve wracking, we probably spent an hour double checking everything, but now we can have a conversation and do everything in 5 minutes and
that's great.
have no issues whatsoever.
Yeah, you got that one on me, man. Yeah, it's longer than 5 minutes for me. How was towing the beam?
I would say I definitely, I was really stressed at first.
Yeah.
not just necessarily the bean, but just towing anything.
Yeah.
I knew when I was gonna get a trailer or something to tow, I wouldn't be able to see outside of the back rear view mirror. I knew I'd have to take probably extra wide turns.
Right.
My braking distance might have to be a little bit longer. And all of that made me feel a little like anxious. But I don't know, I think like having a 4x4 vehicle with a trailer that's super lightweight and the max coupler,
Yeah.
honestly, like there are times now, like 60 days in, we forget we're hauling a trailer. We forget. Like,
Yeah.
my wife is like, hey, you're driving 80. We have a trailer. I'm like, oh, right. I should slow it down a little bit. But it's so smooth. And when we unhitch the trailer and go drive somewhere, we don't really notice the difference
Yeah.
when we're not towing, unless you're going up a hill.
Right. Yeah.
Going up a hill is fun.
One time I was in a hurry towing a bean trailer to a show in the Pacific Northwest.
Yep.
And I was in a hurry because I was way behind, and I stopped somewhere to get food, and I totally forgot that I was towing a trailer, and I pulled out of the parking lot and sideswiped the car.
Oh, no.
With the fender. Because I did, you
Yeah,
know, it's like, it was
happens.
so easy that I forgot that I was towing it at all.
Oh, man. That hasn't happened yet.
Yeah,
I hope it doesn't
yeah,
happen to us, but it can.
yes.
Because you can
Yeah.
get carried away,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. How'd the bean do on the trip?
It, like I said earlier, like we needed a tent that was built like a tank. It has met that expectation.
Okay, good.
The bean has not suffered a scratch. We've done a lot through it. We've stood on that thing. We've gone through windstorms. It's been fine. Like there's been no issues whatsoever.
Nice.
Yeah, it's built like a rock, and it's what we wanted. So.
Favorite thing about the bean?
So I asked this question to my wife last night. She loves the fact that she loves the doors. The fact that you can keep the doors open and still have airflow come in, but you can hear the outside. And even if it's windy, it's fine. It adheres to that tent-like experience, which we
Yeah.
love. Like it's raining, you
Right.
can hear the rain. If there's the sound of
Yeah.
a creek outside, you can kind of hear it.
Yeah.
If you close all your doors and your windows, or even keep your windows open and you can't hear some of those things, you kind of feel like you're in an enclosed cavity,
Yeah.
which we didn't want, but that
Yeah.
door is awesome. For me,
Yeah.
it's just the roomy interior.
Yeah.
I love the roomy interior.
Oh, yeah.
When I'm in that, I don't feel claustrophobic. I can journal. I have some of the best sleeps I've had in my life, shockingly, have been in the trailer.
Oh, yeah.
It's been incredible.
Yeah, you're not the only one. Like, we have a lot of customers say that they just get incredible night's sleep inside the bean. In fact, I knew that I had a hit with bean the first time I took it out. I slept from 11 o'clock to 7 a.m. in the morning, and I never woke up once.
Amazing.
And then I got up at 7, and I'm like, what should I do? Well, maybe I didn't wake up till 9, right? And that never happens
Amazing.
at home, right?
Yep.
And it's just a really comfortable environment to
Oh yeah,
sleep.
for sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Were there any parts of the trip where you wish you weren't towing the bean?
Switchbacks.
Yeah.
Especially the ones where you're going up. Yeah, those were. I don't like driving on switchbacks as it is.
Yeah.
But driving it on a switchback when it's 100 degrees outside,
Yeah.
when you know you're maxed out that tongue weight
Yeah.
and you're going uphill, it's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary. But like you're just doing this and accelerating, and you know, like you're in a really safe environment, but
Right.
like it's just like the nauseousness of
Yeah.
like driving on those. Then you see a car coming, you're like. But that's pretty much it. Other than that,
Yeah.
towing has been it's been a dream. There's been no issues.
So this is maybe a more complex question than it will sound like.
Yep.
The last question is, in hindsight, would you do it again? And let me just put some bones on that for
Sure.
you.
Yep.
One of the things that Cindy and I have always, and I think you and I talked about this, when like sometimes we'll just impulsively say, hey, let's go to southern Utah, or let's go to Moab, you know, and I can't think of a single time that we just packed up and left. And on the way back, we weren't like, that was amazing. I'm so glad we went. I can't remember a single time we were like, oh, I wish we'd have just stayed home and worked on the fence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, so
sure.
anyway, so with that bit of context, in hindsight, would you do it again?
So absolutely yes, without a question. I think because of all of the, I'm gonna say hype, all the hype we put into the 6 months, and we're getting married, it's taking a leap of faith, and it required a tremendous amount of planning. And if you're planning every place you're going to, the trade-off is you're not making things as spontaneous as how you described it, Cindy. You can pick up and go and come back whenever you want to, and you're gonna come across things that you didn't expect. We're getting elements of that for sure, but outside of the strict itinerary we've built, if I were to do this again, I would do exactly what you and Cindy do, which is, it's getting really hot outside, let's go north, and let's go this weekend, and let's just go for a week, and I can work remotely out of my trailer, and let's just go do that, and let's not plan where we're gonna stay, let's just figure it out as we go, because this thing can go on anything and everything.
Right.
I think I didn't have that insight before.
Right. Yeah.
That I do.
That makes a lot of sense.
So if we survive Baja, and when I say survive, I mean like come out of it enjoying it, which I think we will, because you're
gonna love it.
I hope we do. We would love to take this in a serious trip to South America, if the roads allow it and everything else. But Mark, that's
ambitious. That's another between two beans for sure.
That's like 4 years. That's on our first anniversary.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you made a really good point. I think, especially in Baja lends itself really well to being a little more spontaneous, right? Like, I know when, we went on a big Baja trip as a team, and we were on a short time frame, right? So we're like 2 days here, 2 days here, and I wish we would have been able to say, you know what, we really like it here. We're going to stay an extra 4 days.
Yep.
We just like it here,
Yep.
And then when we're done with this place, then we're done with this place, right?
Absolutely.
So,
that's my biggest regret, but also something that I know I'm not gonna, I want to close out that regret and definitely do this trip again.
Yeah.
But just be like, the level of thinking I'm going to go as far as to say is, I'm going to take a dart, throw it on the board. Let's go there and see what happens.
Yeah.
That's the level I think this thing can get you to.
Yep, for sure.
But we didn't do that. Yeah.
Okay, well, this has been really informative. Thank you so much, Niz, for doing this. I want to thank everybody for watching. And as always, if you like this content, please subscribe and like, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.
And take a leap of faith.
Long after I'm dead and my bones are bleaching in the ground, nobody's going to give a flying that I was a surround king of the world, right? They're just not, right?
Like, totally, for sure.
But what's fundamental to human experience? Shelter is, right?
Yep.
Like the fact that somebody gets into a shelter that I designed and immediately feels safe, feels comfortable, right? Like, shelter is fundamental to the human experience,
100%.
right? And so, it's a huge honor to me for somebody to say, like, I picked this as my shelter, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? Safety, food, shelter, like, it's up there in the
some
top
triangle
three.
out there, some framework.
But it's up there like in number
for sure.
3, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's like what is it called? Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
And you're like operating and providing a product at the bottom of it.
Yeah,
and it's actually successful. So you're like, I'm actually doing good things for people. People feel confident in my product. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Hey, let's cut for a minute. Yep. Hey, you guys come over here. We're taking a little break. So here's an interesting story for you might not know. Do you see this little girl right here?
Yes.
So that's my granddaughter, and she, the way that Bean was named is we were at a Sunday dinner, and that's Nora.
Nora,
and
okay.
we were having Sunday dinner, and my daughter was pregnant with her, and I asked my daughter, how pregnant are you? And she's like, well, let's see. So she took out her phone, and it was a pregnancy app, and it said that it was the size of a bean.
No way.
And I was in the middle of designing Bean at the time.
That is amazing.
So yeah, so her middle name is her name is Nora Bean Waite.
No way. That is amazing. That's awesome.
And
They're
that's
beautiful.
my grandson Brody.
That's awesome.
Yeah, come on, come on, run across, dance through here, and ruin the video, dude. Come on, go, yeah. Okay, Brody, your turn. Go.
Come on, let's do it, Brody. Oh yeah, there we go. Do your best bean expression.
Okay. So
That's awesome.
Cindy and I are going to Escalante this weekend.
Oh,
with
nice.
them. So yeah, we're gonna take them down.
Just you two and the grandkids?
Yeah.
But not your kids?
Yeah.
That's an amazing way to spend time with your grandkids.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good.